What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to America's Finest Sports. It's Wednesday night, so I don't know what that was, but we're going to be talking about basketball as always on Wednesday night. But you guys see in the bottom right here, Derwin James was extended today. You know, we are AFS. We try and base everything out of San Diego. And the LA Chargers just had some major news extending Derwin James. I can go over the numbers. They extended Derwin James to make him the highest paid safety in the history of the NFL, which I hate that term because anytime a guy is paid at the highest of their position, it's always the highest in the history of the NFL, so stop saying that. Just say he's the highest paid. But they ended up paying him $76.5 million over 4 years, $19.1 million per year. It's front loaded with $29 million in year one, and has over $40 million guaranteed. I believe it's $42 million specifically. Matt, I'll let you go first. Derwin James, this contract, what do you overall think about this? Is this something they had to do?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you look at where the Chargers are right now, and they're clearly trying to contend. They go and they get a Khalil Mack. They're adding a bunch. They're signing guys. They're trying to really make the most out of Justin Herbert's rookie deal. That's very clear right now. They're making a push. They're trying to be a Super Bowl contender for this year and a few years after that. While Justin Herbert's not super expensive, I love it. I'm usually not super big into signing guys that, have some injury history or play a position in the, like a secondary position, like a safety or a corner. But for Derwin James, I think that kind of all goes out the window because he is an extremely talented player. And when we look at the safety position, I think right now, you go back, like at least when I was younger, when you were younger, Makana, and there were quite a few like elite safeties that were just amazing players. There's not that many anymore. And a lot of the reason is because the rule changes. And a lot of the reason is because people want to play wide receiver because wide receivers get paid. So with that said, Derwin James is a guy that is an absolute force. He can play all over. He can line up in the slot. He can play over the top. He can play as a box safety. He can play linebacker. He can do so much. He's one of the most versatile players in the NFL. He's huge. He's extremely fast. And yes, he's been hurt. Yes, he's been injured a little bit. But it's only $42 million guaranteed, and the deal's front loaded. So even if he has some injuries, you might look back and say, well, yeah, well, he's healthy for the first 2 years, and it's probably going to be worth it for the Chargers. So I like the deal a lot. I think it's something that they absolutely had to do. I mean, you have Bosa and Mack on your D-line. You add a bunch of cornerbacks. This year, their cornerbacks are going to be a lot better. The big addition, J.C. Jackson, but they're also really deep at that position as well. So he's not going to have to focus on as much of like, all right, go man up on this guy, go play a little bit here. Like, we need your help in this spot. No, it's going to be go make plays, go produce turnovers. And he's going to be in a defense where the guys around him are extremely talented. He's going to be a sweet player next season. And I think that, he was in a hold and he wasn't holding out. He's a guy that's kind of a team first guy. So he's still at, training camp, at preseason, all that. But he wasn't playing. So they had to get it done. They were forced to. But this is a guy that you want to sign. This is a guy you want in the building. So I absolutely love it, dude. 4-year deal, 76. It seems like a lot of money. But a couple comps, Deontay Johnson. And you asked me this before we got on, but if the question is, would you rather have Deontay? And let me let everyone know, I like Deontay Johnson a lot. But if the question is, would you rather have Derwin James or Deontay Johnson? That's about as easy as it gets from a team building perspective. You would much rather have Derwin James. So I love the move. I think it's a fantastic move for the Chargers. I think that they get one of their best players on their overall team, and a guy who's going to produce a ton of turnovers. He's going to get to the quarterback even. You can just let him go and just play a role where he can wreck the game, which is going to be really, really exciting to watch. So love the move for the Chargers.
Yeah, this is a great move for them. In my opinion, Derwin James has been the best safety in the NFL since he came in to the NFL. I think it's blasphemous that Darius Leonard, or at least back then went by Darius Leonard, he won Defensive Rookie of the Year. It made no sense because if you come into the league and you are the best at your position, he was AP first team, I feel like you should win that Rookie of the Year. But Derwin James, in that rookie year, he had 100 tackles. As a safety, came in, had 100 tackles. He had 118 tackles last year. He is everywhere for them. And the Chargers, their one weakness on this roster, maybe Kenneth Murray's able to, turn it around. It's that linebacker position. And don't give me the crap about, well, Khalil Mack is technically a linebacker. He's an edge. It's different. I've had people argue with me about how the fact that edge is not a position, and the guys just play linebacker. That's not true, because then when you say Khalil Mack's a linebacker, it doesn't make sense at all. So Derwin James is that linebacker. Derwin James is an elite safety when he's in the box. He's an elite safety when he's not in the box, and that is not something you find, not just today, but it's not something you find very often in the history of the NFL. Guys that can really do both, because there have been players that are great free safeties, right? Ed Reeds, right? A lot of them. But finding guys that are hybrids that can really get up and dirty and get close to the line of scrimmage and also play over the top. Obviously, biggest name ever, Ronnie Lott, was a guy that could really do it all. But Derwin James is that type of mold. And he is a game-changing type of player when you look at him. And Matt, I love the idea that he's paid the exact same amount as Deontay Johnson. Because it just shows that, okay, Deontay Johnson, I like Deontay Johnson like you said, Matt, but Derwin James is a game-changing player. He's a defense-changing player. If this team did not have Derwin James, it would look very differently. Why? Because teams would look at the Chargers like they have the last couple of seasons. They could have been like, run the ball. Just run the ball. I don't care if they have Khalil Mack and they have Joey Bosa and they have really good cornerbacks. Run the ball up the middle of this defense and it will have success. And when did that have the most success? That would be in 2020. What happened in 2020, Matt? He didn't play. And that was how you beat the Chargers. It was run the ball up the middle. Just run it up the middle and no one's going to tackle him, because Derwin James wasn't there to make all of those plays. He is someone that gets behind the line of scrimmage. He gets tackled for loss. He can get sacks for you. And he is someone that is going to be a game-changing player whenever he's on the field and whenever he's healthy. He didn't look like he slowed up. He was a Pro Bowler last year, but this is a player that you have to pay. And again, Matt, I'm probably with you in you probably shouldn't pay safeties a ton of money. But that's most safeties. It's just like my philosophy on running backs. You shouldn't pay your running backs an absurd amount of money unless they do something so different that no one else can replicate that it becomes worth it. When it's your entire offense is your running back, there's two players like that. Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, shout out to CMC. Those players, it's like, okay, I can see why you pay them, because they do everything for you. That is where your pass game, that is where your run game, that is where everything is built out. Derwin James as a safety is where the entire defense is set. Oh, how do you do in coverage? Well, it starts with Derwin. Can he cover the tight end? Can he cover the slot? Can he cover whoever he's asked to cover? Oh, how do you stop the run? Derwin. When you have a player that everything on your defense, other than can you rush the passer, is about that one guy, then it becomes valuable for them to keep. Paying, with the way that a lot of these players are getting paid and with the way that the roster is set up right now, they have a rookie deal contract, rookie quarterback contract. It's the most important thing in the NFL if you want to be able to truly contend, is you got to have that rookie quarterback contract. Obviously, if you have a guy that's a top 3 quarterback, a Mahomes type, yes, you can contend. But if you have a quarterback like Justin Herbert, probably ranked around 8th best quarterback in the NFL, maybe a little bit higher, closer to 5th. You're like, okay, maybe he's not, if he's on a bad team, he's probably not going to win any of the Super Bowl. But now they have the money and they can say, Justin Herbert, this is what we're going to give you. We're going to give you Mike Williams. We're going to give you Austin Eckler. And then on defense, you're going to have Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Derwin James, J.C. Jackson. Is this enough help? And it's like, okay, you got it. Because when Justin Herbert gets a $40 million pay raise, all of a sudden you're going to be taking away 2 of those players off that defense. It doesn't matter who it is, but losing 2 of those players is going to hurt you no matter what. But right now they can afford to do it. And that's what makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know what's going on in the background. It sounds like a smoke alarm's going off, but I don't know if you guys can hear that. Let me turn my mic down a little bit. But basically what I want to say is I think this is an interesting season because Brandon Staley is going to have a ton of pressure on him just because this is a stacked team. And you look at the DBs, it's not like Derwin James is the only guy that's a playmaker. They're going to run a ton of man coverage. The other safety is Nasir Adderley. I mean, your cornerback room is J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel, and Bryce Callahan. That's amazing man coverage corner. So I'm super excited to see how they use Derwin this year. But I really think, honestly, I think this, like them having all these guys, and this isn't like, oh, they re-signed Derwin, so now they have Derwin. Like Derwin was probably going to play, right? It was just like it had to happen. But looking at the roster, I feel like, and I know it's only a second year, but it feels like kind of a make or break year for Brandon Staley because there is so much pressure and their defense was not good last year. You brought up like the struggles in the run game. That was the same thing last season. And you had Derwin and you had linebackers that were banged up and stuff all the time. The interior defensive line was not good. You just didn't have all the talent that you have. I mean, you added J.C. Jackson and Khalil Mack, which is ridiculous. And you also added Sebastian Joseph Day. So, like, you got a lot better. You added a lot of talent. But there's a ton of pressure on Brandon Staley because if their defense does not produce, if their defense struggles in some of the ways they did last season, it's going to be rough. But, I mean, Derwin James is now in a spot. He's in a secondary where the guys around him, you can have a lot of faith that they're going to be able to man up with whoever they're going against. And he's going to be able to roam in the middle of the field. He's going to be an absolute game wrecker. And I'm hyped to watch him, man, because, you know, you brought up that he's already put together some great seasons. He's already been, his rookie year, he was the best safety in the league. Like, why shouldn't he even be better this year? Like, there's no reason that he shouldn't. So, super exciting stuff. But at the same time, a lot of pressure on Brandon Staley and the Chargers with what this roster looks like. But looking forward to watching Derwin James. Derwin James highlights throughout the season as we see him force fumbles, pick off balls, sack quarterbacks, and absolutely light up the middle of the field.
Yeah, he's just another person where a quarterback has to be aware of them. There are a lot of players in the NFL, even if they're really good, that it seems like you don't have to game plan a ton for. And obviously you game plan for everybody, so I'm not trying to take away from them. But even like the elite safeties in the NFL, like I think you absolutely have to game plan for a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick, right? You got to know where Minkah is. You got to know where Derwin is. I really love Harrison Smith. I think he's a really good player. But how much are quarterbacks looking at it like, oh man, but Harrison Smith, man, he's like Harrison Smith's going to affect the run game. He's going to do a lot of things for your defense. But quarterbacks aren't looking out there like it's going to be a tough week this week because we can't go deep. It's like no. They're like, okay, may struggle a little bit running the ball. There's just Jamal Adams in the passing game. You're actually like, where is he? Show me Jamal, baby. Give me Jamal. Put him in a one-on-one. I don't care who we got running routes. You can throw current day O.J. Simpson running the route. And I don't want to make a bad pun, but he's going to beat him pretty good. And he's going to get pretty open. I could have made that a lot worse. I decided to tone it down a little bit. But like he's going to get open, all right? You look for Jamal Adams, and Jamal Adams is paid a lot of money. You look for Derwin James in fear, not excitement. And now he's actually going to be in a position where he doesn't have to do everything. So he can actually like fine-tune his role and get really good as being, kind of the roamer that I think he was drafted out of Florida State to be. Because coming out of Florida State, I don't know how he felt. I think he was drafted 17th, I want to say. Around there. Late, yeah, he was drafted 17th. Oh, no. Yeah, 17th overall, which I was really sad about because I wanted the Ravens to draft him. And it was just like, how is this guy falling? How do these safeties fall? The safeties where you look at them and they're like, they can absolutely do everything because it's rare. It is not often where you see a safety coming out of college and they're like, yeah, they're going to cover great. They're going to stop the run and they can play in the box and they can play over top. For some reason, Isaiah Simmons was drafted, really high, which, freak athlete. But it was like, okay, it's not great in the coverage game. He can't really play over top, but in the box, he's probably going to be really solid. Derwin James and Kyle Hamilton are like the only two players drafted probably in the last 10 years where coming out of college, it was like, and I don't know how Kyle Hamilton's going to turn out. I'm not trying to turn this about him, but it's very rare when it's a consensus of everyone saying this guy can do both. Wide receivers every year we hear about wide receivers. This guy, filthy route runner. This guy's going to get open with the best of them. Quarterbacks. This guy's got a rocket arm. This guy's a winner. This guy can do it all. He's mobile. He's physical. He's got good accuracy. We hear about the cornerbacks. Oh, dude, this guy's a playmaker with the ball in the air. He can lock you up in man. He can play zone. He can do all those things. Look at this edge rusher. He's actually also great against the run. Very good physical power rusher. Repped 27 in the bench press, ran a 4.4 40-yard dash. Freak athlete. He can do it all. You heard about every position except for safety. Safety's always like, oh, yeah, there's a safety. He went in the second round. He's a good cover guy, right? 2 years ago, that's what it was. It was, Javon Holland. It was Andre Sisco. It was Trayvon Merrick. Devine Diablo's like, yeah, one aspect they can really do well. And they don't get drafted in the first round. First round safeties typically can do both, and that's why they're so rare. Because, you look at the safeties in the NFL. Matt, I'll ask you, how many safeties do you think in the NFL right now, I'll say have proven, because we don't know about Kyle Hamilton, that they can really do both?
Not many, dude. Not many at all. Like, I feel like Derwin's definitely the high end of that. And okay, here's an example for you guys. You guys see the Niners banners in the background. I always end up talking about the Niners. You guys know this by now. But one of my favorite players is Jimmy Ward. Jimmy Ward's actually played both, but you can't put him in the box because he's too small. So you cannot do that because he will get hurt. He will not last the full season. Now, Derwin has been banged up. I get it. So maybe that's not the best example, but Derwin, it's not like a size thing. It's not like, oh yeah, Derwin's too small. He's undersized to play there. It's not that. So I feel like, I don't know, dude. I feel like there's not really many. And it's also a lot different too, because a while back when maybe 10 years ago when the rules were a lot different, it wasn't as big of a deal if you couldn't man up with guys, if you couldn't, if you didn't have the hip flexibility as, a typical, a prototypical free safety or a single high coverage safety, right? Because you could just lay them out over the middle, but you cannot do that anymore. So then that whole dynamic, it's almost in some ways kind of remove the box safety a little bit. But when you have a guy that can flash those free safety traits and then can also flash those box traits, those linebacker traits at the same time, that's when you get a superstar like Derwin James. So that's why I think ultimately it's a sweet deal for the Chargers, and they're in a position to be really, really good next year. So exciting stuff. I'd be pumped if you saw Derwin extended for your team.
Yeah, I think that's going to do it on Derwin James. So, Matt, you can go ahead and get on out of here. I know you're not a big NBA guy. So I can take on, the NBA for the rest of this. Thank you, Matt, for coming on. We'll be live on Monday.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about LeBron James. Because LeBron James just got extended. Apparently, it's the biggest contract extension ever. LeBron James is now the highest paid career gross earnings player in NBA history. He passed Kevin Durant. Deservedly so. I'm not trying to take away from that. And I'm going to talk about two things. One, I'm going to talk about the contract. And then two, I'm going to talk about, can LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers win another ring? Because that's the goal, right? LeBron's not playing more years. Maybe he's going after the, Kareem record, but I think he's playing more to try and win that championship. Because if he gets to 5 championships, it starts to reduce the Jordan 6 argument and stuff like that. LeBron's trying to become the greatest of all time. If you don't already have him as the greatest of all time. Because I'm fine if people have him as the GOAT. I have nothing wrong with that. But 2-year deal, $97.1 million. And according to Woj, it can also become a $111 million deal, depending on how the salary cap turns out. But I would assume that it ends up being right around that, $48.5 million a year, which very good for him. But let's talk about the big question, whether or not LeBron James can win another ring. Because right now the Lakers are in a terrible spot. They have Westbrook, and I love Russell Westbrook. I have no problems with Russell Westbrook. And I'm going to pull up the Lakers depth chart so that I don't mix anything up. And I'm also going to be looking at the contracts and things like that, because you have to look at, when you look at teams, you have to figure out, okay, are the Lakers going to be good next year? Yeah, probably. They had a lot of guys that were injured last year. Anthony Davis and LeBron got hurt, sporadically throughout the year. But in the future, right now, the guys that they have locked up, it's LeBron locked up through 2025. Anthony Davis locked up through 2025. Technically, I think there's players options for both. Actually, LeBron James, I don't think they've updated it. I think it's through. Oh, no. It is. Okay. It is updated correctly. They have Taylor Horton Tucker through 2024 and Damian Jones through 2024. So wild card. It is a massive wild card for the Los Angeles Lakers in the upcoming, future. Russell Westbrook, I have no idea what's going to happen with him. But like I said, when we didn't have this channel back then when Westbrook got traded, but the people that I talked to, I hated it. I thought it was the worst possible move for both sides. Felt like it made no sense for Westbrook, and it made no sense for the Lakers, and it made no sense for LeBron. Is Westbrook a star? Yes. But Russell Westbrook needs a particular skill set around him, team philosophy, to be able to succeed. He's a ball-dominant, aggressive, high-volume, shoot-first player. Now, at the same time, when he has the right players around him, when he has three-point shooters around him, he is fantastic because he can drive and kick, and he's very, very good at that. When he was playing with the Washington Wizards, he helped lead them to the playoffs because he held the ball, he drove, he kicked to Davis Bertans, and when he was, struggling with his shot, he was able to kick it out to Bradley Beal, who can shoot very well, but also he could be like, hey, Bradley, you take this possession, you do your thing. And Bradley Beal was able to be one of the top scorers in the NBA season that year because Russell Westbrook allowed him to be. A lot of players that have played with Russ, they've been able to succeed, in terms of total points because that's what Russell Westbrook tends to do. But with LeBron James, it doesn't work. Why? Because LeBron James is ball dominant. And LeBron James is the best player on that team. So you're going to give him the ball before you give it to Russ, which makes complete sense. That's what I would do if I was, the coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. I would be like, yo, give it to LeBron. And then when he's not feeling it, he can kick it out to you and he can swing it to you. Russell Westbrook is not a swing it to type of player because he can't shoot. He's never really been able to shoot. The only time he could really shoot was, that MVP season. But that was ridiculous. Most of those shots were just him pulling up. And he was knocking them down. So it doesn't work. It doesn't work with those two playing together. Because LeBron needs the shooters around him, and Westbrook's just not a shooter. So it does not work at all. At the same time, can the Lakers get rid of Russell Westbrook? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to happen just because, one, Russell Westbrook's making a lot of money. He's making $47 million a year. He's one of the highest paid players in all of basketball. It's going to be tough for a team to even be able to take on that salary, not just be willing to take on that salary. Lakers would definitely have to give up picks. A lot of people would be like, oh, they'd have to give up THT, which, potentially they would have to do. But I feel like they're going to have Westbrook this year. Maybe they do the deal and they get Kyrie Irving that some people have talked about. But I don't know. I feel like Westbrook's going to be on the team this year. And I think he's going to be relatively solid. He's going to put up similar numbers to what he did last year. He's probably going to put up 17. He's probably going to put up 8. And he's probably going to put up 7. 17, 8, and 7. For most players, that would be really solid. But for Russell Westbrook, that's pretty bad because of what we're used to, 28, 10, and 10, 28, 10, and 12, 28, 11, and 11. Just those types of numbers every single night is not the same Russell Westbrook we're getting because of the system that he's playing in. So that leads us to 2024, I think, is their championship window. The 2024-2025 season, which is 1 year. Or I'm sorry, they got 2023 to 2025. 2 seasons that I think they have a legitimate chance to win. And so I need to pull up the free agents in 2023. Because this is LA and this is LeBron James. Free agents are going to want and be willing to come to LA. It's very different than, the Portland Trailblazers with Damian Lillard, where it's like, hey, come to Portland. And guys are like, no, we don't like Portland. Very different from that situation. They have pull. They're going to have a lot of money. They're freeing up the $47 million from Russell Westbrook. They can pay whoever they want as much money as they want. And in my opinion, I feel like they shouldn't go after a superstar and they should go fully in on depth. If they want the best chance of winning, don't have it be LeBron, AD, and, someone else. Right now, it looks like Kyrie Irving will be an unrestricted free agent. Don't have it be Kyrie. All right? The reason why the Lakers were able to win that championship with LeBron was they had depth. Kuzma was playing really well. They had just decent players off the bench. That is not the Lakers this season. In this last season, right? Like, it's LeBron, AD, and Westbrook, and then I like Lonnie Walker, but Kendrick Nunn, Stanley Johnson, Damian Jones, Thomas Bryant's not bad. Juan Toscano Anderson, Austin Reeves, Max Christie. Like, the depth is not there. And in the NBA, I think it's shown over the last couple of seasons. I talked about this in my Big 3 video, which if you guys haven't seen that, you guys can check that out, where it's no longer becoming about the 3 best players you have. It's about the players coming off the bench and the guys playing in those roles. So I'm going to start looking for really good role players that I think they could potentially go after. Maybe guys, like they could go after a guy like Gary Trent Jr., all right, where he's going to get a big deal. But I don't think he's going to get $40 million. Like, maybe he gets $28 million. You could sign him, and then you could also get yourself a guy like, I think Terrence Ross is going to be a little bit too old at that point. But you can get yourself, guys like Dwight Powell, guys like Patrick Beverly. Heck, you could go back and get Kuzma, Christian Wood, Will Barton. I know that these are somewhat older players, Malik Beasley, Karis LeVert. Those are the types of players that they should go after because they can get 2, maybe 3 of them. And all of a sudden it becomes LeBron James and Anthony Davis combined with 3 or 4 other guys that they can off the load to. Because right now, the way the roster is currently structured and the way the roster would be constructed if they traded Russ for Kyrie or they signed Kyrie next offseason, how it would work is you have to have LeBron, AD, or Kyrie on the court at all times. And they will be the entire offense at all times. It's not the way that it's going to work in the NBA. Because if a guy gets hurt, we know the nicknames for Anthony Davis, Ada Davis, or Data Davis. Way too many nicknames about him getting injured all the time. And it's typically not like serious injury. It's like, oh, he's missing this game. Well, all of a sudden, if he gets hurt, it becomes, okay, LeBron and Kyrie have to be on the floor at all times. And then, like, one of them gets tired, and you're like, oh, no. We can't play right now because we don't have anyone that can create their own shot off the bench. Whereas, if you get 2, 3, 4 good role players, and there could be other role players that just haven't developed. Also, Dylan Brooks is going to be a free agent. That could be a great player to go after. You can look at them and say, like, hey, we've got 3 or 4 of you. Karis LeVert, you can make your own shot. Dylan Brooks, you can score the basketball. You can play some good defense. LeBron and AD can step off the court. Maybe it's only for 2, 3, 4 minutes at a time. But they don't have to be, like, terrified that they're going to lose whatever lead they have or any chance of, winning the game that they're playing in. LeBron James is getting older. He can't take 48 minutes a game in the playoffs every game. He just can't do that. Most players can't. I'm not trying to take away anything from him. He's one of the best players in the NBA. But you can't ask him to do everything. So they got to make sure that they can get some players. So 2023, I think, definitely has some possibilities to get some really good signings. They have to make sure they don't mess it up because 2024, they can also sign some players. And this is when we start to get, the bigger names in free agency. Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Klay Thompson, Tobias Harris, Chris Middleton, James Harden, Spicy P, Drew Holiday, CJ McCollum, Kristaps Porzingis, Gordon Hayward, Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, Jaylen Brown, Draymond Green, Buddy Hield, Mike Conley, Fred VanVleet, Lonzo Ball, Eric Gordon, Joe Harris, Domantas Sabonis, Spencer Dinwiddie. There's other players, but you guys get the idea. There's a lot of more players, so they don't have to spend. Maybe they give a 1-year deal to one of the role players that they signed in 2023. And they say, hey, in 2024, if you're really good, we'll re-sign you. But if they're not that good, they can say, hey, Buddy Hield, You're a shooter. You want to go play with LeBron. Right now, Buddy Hield's making $23 million a year. I think the Lakers would pay $23 million to have Buddy Hield. I think they could bring in a DeMar DeRozan to be the secondary scorer behind LeBron James. They could bring in a Domantas Sabonis to maybe play the center position for them. Domantas Sabonis is only I know he's seen as like a really good player. He's only making $18 million a year. That has potential of, hey, Domantas, we'll pay you 18. Play our center position. And then they could also get, hey, we need a facilitating point guard. Here's Lonzo Ball. And I know Laker fans may not like Lonzo Ball. So maybe they go after someone else. Maybe they go after a scorer like Spencer Dinwiddie or a veteran like Mike Conley. That's the championship window. I don't think they're in the championship contention after LeBron James, finishes this deal in 2025. I think he's just going to be looking to play with Bronny. So unless the Lakers draft Bronny, I don't think LeBron James will be staying. Maybe he would, but I feel like he's going to go try and play with Bronny. So that's what they got. Like, I think they can win a championship if they do it right. I don't think they will win a championship if they get a third star. If they give another player a max contract. If they trade Russell Westbrook for Kyrie Irving, it's not going to work. It's not going to work because there's no depth. And also, they're going to have to give up draft capital to offload Russell Westbrook's contract. So I say you keep Russell Westbrook. You try to win. Maybe they do. I root for Russell Westbrook, so I hope they do. But if they don't, let Russ walk. Keep your draft assets. Keep your, young, it's very limited, but your young capital. And bring in some role players on short-term deals. Because teams are always needing role players. It's difficult to trade a Russell Westbrook making $45 million a year. Now, on the other hand, trading a 3-and-D player that makes $18 million a year, you can do that because other contending teams are going to want them. So if you sign him to a 2-year deal and you're like, you know what? We're going to have the money to go after, a Mike Conley, and we really want to do that. We think he would fit well. They can trade the guy making $18 million a year because it's very easy to do that in comparison to a Russell Westbrook making 45 or 47 or whatever the ridiculous number is. They can win the championship if they do it the right way. Win it through depth because they already have the star power. Unless they don't believe Anthony Davis is the guy. But then they got to find another star to pair with LeBron James. But I feel like they really like AD, when he's healthy. And like fully healthy, not, he's playing at 50%. I think he's actually a really solid player still. But that's going to do it for that topic. Let me know what you guys think about LeBron James. Can the Lakers win another championship? Let's get into this final topic. I don't know how long this is going to go, but this is one of my favorite topics right here. The Mount Rushmore of basketball. If you don't know Mount Rushmore, take a geography or a history lesson. Mount Rushmore is 4 presidents chiseled into rock. So, when people say who's on the Mount Rushmore of whatever, it's the 4, it's not the 4 best players, right? Because then it would be a lot easier, right? I think my 4 best players of all time are probably, Jordan, LeBron, Kareem, and I flip-flop Magic and Bird all the time, but I'll say Magic. You can say Kobe, you can say, Shaq, Wilt, Bill Russell, any of them. You can go with that. But it's not the 4 best. It's like the 4 most important. The guys that maybe they affected the game a ton, or, they were really an icon, or they helped inspire people, whatever it is. That's what helps get you there. A guy that I think, if he had done a little bit more in his career, could be on the Mount Rushmore, would be a guy like Allen Iverson. I don't think he's on there right now, but the way that he was able to be an icon in terms of style and personality in the NBA was very influential. So, that boosts your score, right? I personally think, Kawhi Leonard's probably a better basketball player than Allen Iverson, and I love AI, but Kawhi's, super good. But how much of an impact does Kawhi have on the game of basketball? It's pretty limited. Because you don't hear about him. He doesn't talk to anybody. He just goes out there, plays, and goes back home. Totally fine. 2 different styles. But I'm going to start off. I'm going to give my Mount Rushmore. And then we'll talk about whether or not Steph Curry should be on the Mount Rushmore, because I've seen a lot of people talking about Mount Rushmore and having Curry and not having Curry. But I'm going to start off. Number one, I think it has to be Bill Russell. I mean, outside of the 11 championships, I talked about him, rest in peace to Bill Russell. But, first black coach in the history of the NBA, one of the first black players in the NBA, super successful, super dominant, helped to create the biggest rivalry, maybe in the history of sports. He deserves to be on there. He also, after his career, still had a major impact on the game of basketball, as a whole. So I think he's on there. I think he has to be on there. Next guy on there I have is Michael Jordan. I think Michael Jordan, the way that he played the game of basketball, it became, you got to be like Mike. That was the saying, right? Got to be like Mike. Pretty sure a movie is called Like Mike. But the way that, not just him playing basketball, but it was the way he played where everyone saw it and was like, I want to do that. After Michael Jordan played, because Michael Jordan played in the era of the big men, right? There was a ton of big men playing in the NBA, late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s. That was like the era of the big man, right? You have Hakeem, you've got Patrick Ewing, towards the tail end of that, you've got the Admiral, you've got a ton of, obviously, like Dikembe, Shaq. There's a lot of guys. But people didn't want to be like those big guys because Michael Jordan was like, you got to hit the mid-range shots, you got to get those flashy dunks, and you got to play a little bit of hard defense. And everyone kind of wanted to be like that. And what followed that? What followed Michael Jordan's era? That was the 2000s era. 2000s era is typically seen as the least efficient basketball era of all time. Why? Because everyone wanted to be like Michael Jordan. It was all about, the focal point of 2000 basketball was Kobe Bryant. And Kobe Bryant's like, that was Michael Jordan. But, in a Lakers uniform, basically. He modeled everything after him. He had to hit those mid-range shots. And we just saw so many players trying to replicate that. Trying to take that slower game of basketball, get those cool dunks, and do all that stuff. Like, Michael Jordan changed the way basketball was played. He also had a major impact on the shoe game. The way that he was able to get those personalized endorsements that, just really took off. Also very impactful, but I think I have to have Michael Jordan on there. Number 3, this one's very tough. This is when it starts to get very difficult because, again, LeBron James, first greatest basketball player of all time, right? And I think I have to put him on here because he is that great. I don't want to, actually, but I'm going to put him on there. LeBron James, the way that he plays the game of basketball, he was able to evolve his career because he came into the league in 2003, and it was the very inefficient, athletic-based, type of offense. And now he's kind of transitioned, and now it's like, yes, LeBron's a freaky athlete, but, he can shoot the ball. He's always been a great playmaker, but it's more focused on playmaking, I think, than it was initially. And he's shown that guys can transform their career. And I think that's huge in the history of basketball, right? Because a lot of times guys come into the league and they want to stay that same player. They want to be, maybe they come into the league and they're the sharpshooter. They want to be the sharpshooter their entire career. LeBron James was able to come in and he was like, yeah, I'm going to be that athletic freak and I'm going to play for 20. He may play for 30 years, but I'm going to play for 20 years. And whatever happens to the game of basketball, I'm going to adapt. And I'm going to be as smart as anybody else out there on the court. And I'm going to dominate and I'm going to win championships. LeBron James dominated the 2000s to 2010s era of championships and NBA finals and the playoffs. You turn on a playoff game, it's probably LeBron James. You turn on a primetime game, TNT, whatever it is, ESPN, it's probably a LeBron James game. That impact is felt. Then the final spot, this is when we're bringing up Steph and Curry. It comes down to a lot of different guys. Kareem, Magic, Kobe. Those are all great options, and I don't fault anybody for choosing them. Heck, if you want to throw Wilt in there, I wouldn't throw George Mikan in there, but if you want to throw the 50s legend, George Mikan in there, go for it. But I do put Stephen Curry there. And you may ask why. And I'm going to repeat what I said at the beginning of this segment, where I say Mount Rushmore isn't about the 4 best players of all time. It's about the 4 most impactful and the 4 most influential. And Stephen Curry has been influential. And I know that there's a lot of people that will say, Steph Curry didn't invent the 3-point shot. They were already shooting more threes when Steph Curry got into the league and stuff like that. And it was already increasing, which is true. But that's not why every kid in America grabs a basketball and they don't want to shoot layups. Even when they're 4 years old, they don't want to shoot layups. Where do they want to stand? They want to stand at half court. And they want to throw it in. I think he's got that same like Mike effect. Because the difficult thing, I don't think LeBron James has this. Because no one else can be LeBron James. No one is going to be that big and that strong and that fast. Maybe there will be. But it's going to be very rare. Thing about Steph Curry is any kid can feel like Steph Curry. Any kid. Any kid in the world can grab a basketball. They can walk out to the 3-point line and they can try and shoot it. And when they make it, may not be the first try, may not be the second try, may not be the 100th try. But when they do make it, they're going to feel like Steph Curry. And that's going to encourage them to keep shooting those shots. A lot of kids don't grab a basketball and say, let me hit this Tim Duncan, elbow bank shot. It's not seen very much anymore. I'm from Portland. After Damian Lillard hit the buzzer beater against the Houston Rockets, everyone was trying to do the Dame shot, running across the court, catch it, throw it up. No one was really making it. But Stephen Curry has had that impact throughout, the last 8 years. I don't know, 2014, 2015. That's kind of when it really started to take off. Every kid growing up wants to be able to shoot. And we're seeing it from every aspect of the game. The big men come into the NBA. What are they doing? They're shooting. And you're like, why are they shooting? They're 7'1". It's because they weren't always 7'1". We hear all these stories, guys like Anthony Davis. It happens to a lot of people. Chet Holmgren, coming in. He's seen as a unicorn. When they're in freshman year of high school, when they're younger, they weren't the biggest guys on the team. And so, what were they doing? They were working on that 3-point shot. And they were working on the handle. And they were trying to develop that aspect of the game. Why? Because it's not cool to be like Embiid and Jokic. I think they're probably 2 top 5 players in the NBA. I gotta fix this. Get it to rezoom in on my face. There we go. But it's not as fun. It's not as cool. 3 is worth more than 2. So I want to work on the 3-point shot. So everyone, when you're analyzing draft prospects, which I do because I'm an OKC fan and we need the draft capital, everyone's looking at it and they're like, can he shoot? That's the first thing that most people look at. Can he shoot? Why? Because that's what most people want. They want someone that can shoot. They want someone like Steph and someone like Clay. They want someone like those Golden State Warriors have had. LeBron James and the 2016 Cavaliers won the championship. But kids weren't going out there saying, I want to shoot like Kyrie. I want to shoot like LeBron. I want to shoot like, J.R. Smith. Maybe some people were saying, I want to be bald like Richard Jefferson. I don't know. But I want to go out there and I want to shoot like Steph. Even though they lost. I want to shoot like Steph because I can do that. I can't dunk like LeBron. I probably can't play defense like Kawhi Leonard. I can't do any of this because it's difficult. And it's hard to see playing really good defense in a pickup game. One, it's really annoying. Stop doing that. I'm not very good at basketball, so I get annoyed when people are good at defense. But you can grab a ball, and you can be by yourself, and you can shoot. And when people are shooting and they're trying to get better, and they're just having fun, this is what I did. When I was a kid, when I was growing up playing basketball, it was Kobe. I mean, it was run, throw it off, shoot a bank shot, try and knock it down, post fade away, throw it back. Like, that's what I was trying to do. I was like, I want to be like Kobe. I'm throwing random hook shots. I'm like, that's why I played basketball. I wanted to be like Kobe Bryant. I want to make the difficult shots. Like, that was the fun part. I was like, oh yeah, just, throw it behind the back. Like, just do everything possible to score. But now, when I go out there, I would love to be able to go out there and just be like, oh yeah, I want to hit all these shots. But I'm like, no, I don't think I'm really going to make those shots. But I can maybe hit some threes. And even if I don't hit a high percentage, I can hit them. And when I hit them, it makes me feel good. Stephen Curry impacted the game of basketball, not just from, now more people shoot threes in the NBA, but from the kid on their, maybe it's the park, maybe it's, his driveway, whatever it is, it made that kid want to shoot threes more because it gave him someone to look at. I want to shoot it like them. Because obviously 3-pointers have been a part of the game since, the 1970s? But people weren't going out there being like, I'm only going to shoot this shot. Why? It was like, you got to knock down your free throws. You got to knock down your layups. You got to knock down the mid-range, the post, do all that stuff. And then there'd be some, random people like Larry Bird, where it was like, whoa, this guy's really good at this. I still kind of want to be like Kareem, and then this dude named Magic was playing, and it was like, I got to pass like Magic, all this stuff. And then Jordan came in and was like, I don't need to shoot threes. Let me be like Mike. Now it's all about shooting like Steph. We see all the highlights every single day, it seems like. There's some kid in some like rec league or AAU, and everyone gets mad and they're like, look at what Steph Curry has done to the game of basketball. And Steph's like, I didn't tell you to shoot that shot. And it's some random like 38-footer by some 9-year-old. Why are they shooting that shot? That is because of Steph Curry. That's not because more threes are being shot in the NBA. It's because Steph Curry shoots and makes them. And he does them in the biggest moments, and that's what inspires people to try and work on their game. That is what puts you on the Mount Rushmore. It's not about being great at basketball. Because there are a lot of people better at the game of basketball than Steph Curry. I think the biggest one that I can say is Tim Duncan. Nobody wants to be like Tim Duncan. Maybe you do want to be like Tim Duncan. If you want to be like Tim Duncan, shout out to you. I fully respect you. But that's not the model kids want to look after. Kids get into basketball because of Steph Curry. I hated Steph Curry originally. I was an OKC fan. I was like, man, this Steph Curry dude's so overrated. I'm watching him, and then like 2015, I was like, nah, this dude's not overrated. This dude is something else. And he has changed the game so much. And I don't know why people hate on. I think it's because maybe they're fans of other players. Maybe he hit some shot against your team. Steph Curry deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore because every kid, or most kids in the world, when they pick up a basketball, they step out to the 3-point line to shoot like Steph. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'll be back again talking basketball next Wednesday, but I'll be back talking football on Monday.